Stop everything you're doing right now because what I'm about to tell you is going to change your entire perspective on WWE's current direction and make you question whether the company has completely lost touch with reality and common sense. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, the biggest movie star on the planet, the Hollywood megastar who appears on WWE television maybe once a year if we're lucky, who doesn't need wrestling anymore because he's conquered entertainment and built an empire that extends far beyond anything WWE could ever offer him, just showed up backstage on Smackdown last night without warning and systematically destroyed two of the company's most promising young stars, Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, in a backstage beatdown that was so one-sided, so brutal, so completely unnecessary that I'm still trying to understand what possible creative justification exists for having a part-time nostalgia act bury two full-time wrestlers who are supposed to be the future of this company. And before you come at me with the argument that The Rock is The Rock and he can do whatever he wants because he's the biggest star in wrestling history, let me tell you exactly why this decision is not just bad but catastrophically damaging to WWE's long-term roster development, to the credibility of their current talent, and to the message it sends that no matter how hard you work or however you get with audiences, you always be secondary to legends who show up for their paycheck and leave without doing anything to actually help the business move forward. This is the same toxic pattern we've seen destroy wrestling companies before, this worship of the past at the expense of the future, this belief that old stars drawing power is more valuable than building new stars who can carry the company for the next decade. And if you're not angry about what happened last night, then you're part of the problem and you're contributing to WWE's inevitable decline when all these part-timers finally retire for good and there's nobody left who audiences actually care about. Let me set the scene because the context makes this even more infuriating and short-sighted than it appears on the surface. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker have been two of SmackDown's most consistently featured and protected talents over the past several months. Reed is a powerhouse who's worked all over the world, paid his dues in every major independent promotion, perfected his craft through years of hard matches and brutal training, and finally got his opportunity to shine on the main roster where he's been destroying people and establishing himself as a legitimate monster heel who audiences take seriously. Bron Breakker is second-generation royalty, the son of Rick Steiner and nephew of Scott Steiner, who has all the physical tools and natural charisma you could ask for, who's been positioned as a future world champion since the day he debuted, who represents exactly the kind of young athletic talent that WWE should be building their entire future around. Both of these men have been working their asses off every single week, performing on house shows, doing media appearances, putting their bodies on the line in increasingly dangerous matches to get themselves over and prove they belong at the top of the card. And their reward for all that dedication and hard work? Getting squashed by a 52-year-old movie star who hasn't wrestled a full match in over a year and who's going to disappear again for 6 months after making this one random appearance. The segment started innocently enough with Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker in a backstage area near the locker rooms having what appeared to be a tense conversation. The cameras caught them arguing about something, the audio wasn't clear but body language suggested this was building to a physical confrontation between two alphas who both want to be the top monster on the SmackDown roster. This is good storytelling, this is how you build feuds between two legitimate threats, you create conflict and competition and let them fight it out to determine who's actually better. The crowd would have been invested in seeing Reed and Breakker eventually collide in a match at a pay-per-view, maybe even for a championship if WWE had properly built them up. But before their argument could escalate into anything meaningful, before they could establish what their conflict was actually about or give audiences a reason to care about their eventual showdown, The Rock's music hit throughout the arena and everyone immediately knew that whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to benefit Bronson Reed or Bron Breakker. The Rock appeared in that backstage hallway seemingly out of nowhere because that's what The Rock does. He materializes whenever he wants because he's The Rock and normal rules about being scheduled for shows or having storyline reasons for appearing don't apply to him. He was in street clothes, jeans and a tight black shirt that showed off the physique he maintains through movie star personal training and pharmaceutical assistance that would get any active full-time wrestler suspended but apparently is fine for part-timers who bring media attention. And he had that signature Rock smirk on his face, that expression that says he knows he's the biggest star in the room and everyone else is just fortunate to be in his presence. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker both turned to look at Rock, clearly as surprised as everyone watching that he was there, and for maybe 5 seconds there was this awkward tension where nobody knew what was supposed to happen next. Was Rock there to mediate their conflict? Was he there to align with one of them against the other? Was this setting up some kind of triple threat situation or faction warfare? None of those logical storytelling options happened because WWE doesn't do logical storytelling when legends are involved. The Rock looked at both of them, delivered one of his classic Rock lines about smelling what they were cooking or something equally predictable and pandering to nostalgia, and then without any provocation or justification, hit Bronson Reed with a rock bottom out of absolutely nowhere. Reed, who outweighs The Rock by probably 80 pounds, who's one of the most agile big men in wrestling today, who should theoretically be able to see a rock bottom coming and counter or avoid it, just stood there and took it like he was paralyzed by being in the Rock's presence. He went down hard, crashed into the concrete floor, and immediately started selling like he'd been hit by a truck, even though we've seen Bronson Reed absorb far more devastating moves in his matches and keep fighting. But that's what happens when you're in a segment with The Rock. You have to sell his offense like it's the most devastating thing you've ever experienced, even when it makes no logical sense for your character. Bron Breakker, watching his rival get destroyed, should have either run away recognizing he was next, or immediately attacked Rock to prevent the same thing happening to him. Instead, he just stood there like a deer in headlights, waiting for his turn to get buried. The Rock picked up Bron Breakker, who's a legitimate college football player and amateur wrestling star who should be able to defend himself, and hit him with the people's elbow. Not some devastating new finisher that Rock has developed. Not some MMA-inspired submission or strike that would justify being able to neutralize a younger, stronger, more active athlete. The people's elbow, a theatrical comedy move that involves Rock bouncing off the ropes multiple times and taking forever to actually deliver the elbow drop, a move that looks cool and gets crowd reactions but has never been portrayed as particularly damaging or difficult to avoid. And Bron Breakker, future world champion, genetic freak with all the tools to be WWE's next big thing, just laid there on the ground waiting for Rock to go through his entire routine and then sold the elbow like it had knocked him unconscious. Both men were left lying on that backstage floor, destroyed by a part-timer who showed up for one segment, while The Rock stood over them posing for the cameras and basking in the crowd's cheers that were being piped in from the arena, even though this was happening backstage where the live audience couldn't actually see it. Here's why this is so fundamentally damaging and wrong on every conceivable level. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker are supposed to be monsters. They are supposed to be the guys that other wrestlers are afraid of, the dominant physical specimens who mow through opposition and look unstoppable in their pursuit of championships and supremacy. WWE has spent months building them up as legitimate threats, having them win matches decisively, destroy jobbers and mid-card talent, establish themselves as forces that require multiple people or special circumstances to overcome. And in 30 seconds, The Rock made them both look like absolute jokes. If a 52-year-old part-timer who hasn't competed regularly in years can walk into a room and casually destroy both of these supposed monsters without breaking a sweat, why should audiences take Reed or Breakker seriously ever again? Why should we believe they are dangerous when The Rock, who isn't even an active wrestler, can beat them both simultaneously? Every bit of credibility WWE had built for these two characters was wiped away in one nostalgic segment designed to pop the crowd and generate social media buzz without any consideration for the long-term damage it causes. The immediate response from WWE's social media team and commentary was predictable and infuriating. They treated this like an incredible moment, like The Rock blessing us with his presence and reminding everyone why he's the greatest of all time. The commentary team was falling over themselves to put Rock over, talking about how he's still got it, how nobody can touch The Rock, how even after all these years in Hollywood he can walk into WWE and dominate anyone. They completely ignored the fact that Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker are supposed to be top-tier talents who audiences should be invested in, instead framing them as lucky to have been in a segment with The Rock even though that segment made them look weak and incompetent. WWE's Twitter account posted clips of the beatdown with captions celebrating Rock's appearance and asking fans if they want to see more, completely tone-deaf to the reality that more Rock appearances mean more opportunities for him to bury current talent who actually need the wins and the strong booking. The fan reaction has been frustratingly split in a way that reveals the generational divide in wrestling fandom. Older fans who grew up during Rock's initial run are celebrating this appearance, thrilled to see their hero back on television doing Rock things, not particularly concerned about what it means for current wrestlers because in their minds nobody today is as good as the stars from their era anyway. These fans don't care that Reed and Breakker got buried because they don't view Reed and Breakker as stars worth protecting, they see them as inferior products compared to the legends they grew up watching. Meanwhile, younger fans and fans who actually follow WWE programming consistently are expressing frustration and anger about this segment, pointing out the obvious damage it does to current talent, questioning why WWE keeps bringing back part-timers to make full-time wrestlers look weak, arguing that this short-term nostalgia pop isn't worth the long-term cost of having a roster where nobody feels important or credible. The comments sections on every wrestling website and social media platform are war zones right now, with these two camps arguing about whether Rock appearing was good for business or devastating for roster morale and future planning. Let's talk about The Rock's motivation for even being there because it matters and it reveals the calculated nature of these appearances. Rock doesn't show up for free. He doesn't do WWE any favors out of loyalty or love for the business. Every single Rock appearance is negotiated, contracted, and compensated at a level that would make your head spin. We're talking millions of dollars for a handful of appearances, possibly equity stakes or back-end deals related to merchandise and media rights, definitely approval power over how he's used and who he works with. The Rock appears when it benefits The Rock's brand, when he has a movie to promote or a business venture to publicize, when his team has calculated that WWE exposure will drive value for his other projects. And WWE enables this because having The Rock appear generates immediate media coverage, drives social media engagement, creates a spike in viewership for that particular episode even if those viewers don't stick around for following weeks. It's a short-term transactional relationship where both parties benefit in the immediate moment but the long-term health of WWE's roster and storytelling suffers. The historical precedent for this pattern is ugly and cautionary. WCW died in part because they kept bringing back aging stars and paying them enormous contracts while their young talent was underutilized and undervalued. The Monday Night Wars ended not because WWF had better legends, but because they built new stars like Stone Cold and Rock himself who connected with audiences and carried the company into a new era. Rock became The Rock because WWF gave him opportunities and protected him and let him develop into a main event talent rather than constantly bringing back Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage to make the current roster look inferior. But now Rock is the legend being brought back to bury the next generation, and WWE seems completely oblivious to the irony and the danger of repeating the mistakes that killed their main competitor 20 years ago. If Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker never get the same opportunities Rock got, if they are always positioned as lesser than the stars of the past, then they'll never develop into the kind of talents who can carry WWE when Rock and the other part-timers are too old or too busy to appear anymore. Backstage morale after segments like this has to be absolutely terrible even if nobody's willing to say it publicly. Imagine you're a wrestler on the Smackdown roster, you're working 5 days a week doing house shows and television and media obligations, you're taking bumps and risking injuries and sacrificing time with your family to help make WWE successful, and then a part-timer shows up once every few months and gets positioned as more important and more powerful than anyone who's actually there consistently. How is that not demoralizing? How does that not create resentment and frustration? The answer is that it absolutely does, but wrestlers can't complain publicly because that would be considered unprofessional and would likely result in punishment or burial on television. So everyone smiles and posts on social media about how great it was to be in the building when The Rock appeared, and they bury their actual feelings because expressing them would be career suicide. This is the toxic culture that part-timer worship creates, where speaking truth about how it damages the product and the morale is treated as disloyal rather than legitimate criticism that leadership should be listening to. Triple H's role in this decision is particularly disappointing because he of all people should understand the damage that legend burials cause. Triple H himself was accused of burying young talent during his active career, of using his political power to protect his position at the expense of rising stars who threatened his spot. He's talked in interviews about regretting some of those decisions, about wishing he'd been more generous with putting people over and helping build the next generation. And yet here he is as head of creative, allowing or actively booking segments where The Rock comes in and destroys two of SmackDown's most promising young talents for no storyline reason beyond generating a momentary pop from the crowd. Did Triple H learn nothing from his own experience? Does he not see the parallel between what he did as an active wrestler and what he's allowing Rock to do now? Or is he making a calculated business decision that short-term Rock appearances are worth more than long-term talent development because that's what the shareholders and the corporate bosses want to see? But it's the Rock defense that I'm already seeing in comments and on social media is intellectually lazy and ignores the fundamental problem. Yes, Rock is a huge star. Yes, his appearances draw attention and generate buzz. Yes, he's earned his legendary status through years of incredible work and charisma. None of that justifies using him in ways that damage current talent and undermine the credibility of the active roster. There are plenty of ways Rock could appear on WWE television that would benefit everyone involved. He could be a special referee for a big match, adding star power without having to physically compete. He could cut promos hyping up current talent, passing the torch in explicit ways that make it clear he endorses the new generation as worthy successors. He could appear as a motivational figure or mentor character who helps rather than hurts active wrestlers. Instead, WWE consistently uses Rock in segments where he looks more impressive than everyone else, where his mere presence makes current stars seem inferior by comparison, where the message is that the old days were better and today's wrestlers can't measure up. The financial absurdity of this situation makes it even more galling. The Rock is making millions for these appearances while Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker are making a fraction of that despite working a full schedule and being the ones actually carrying WWE programming week in and week out. Rock gets paid more for one night than most of the roster makes in a year, and his compensation comes directly out of the same budget that determines how much everyone else gets paid and whether WWE can afford to sign new talent or give raises to deserving wrestlers. So not only is Rock's appearance hurting Reed and Breakker creatively by making them look weak, it's also hurting them financially by consuming resources that could have been distributed among the full-time roster. This is the kind of resource allocation decision that benefits stockholders and executives in the short term while creating long-term problems when the talent pool is demoralized and underpaid and looking for opportunities elsewhere. Social media engagement metrics are probably the reason WWE keeps doing this despite the obvious creative problems. When The Rock appears, Twitter explodes, Instagram lights up, TikTok gets flooded with clips, and WWE can point to all that online conversation as evidence that the appearance was successful and valuable. But engagement doesn't equal quality storytelling, and it doesn't translate to sustainable long-term audience growth. People might talk about The Rock appearing for a day or two, but are they tuning in next week when Rock is gone and it's back to Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker trying to rebuild credibility that was destroyed in 30 seconds? The data suggests they are not, that Rock's appearances create temporary spikes that don't sustain, that the nostalgia high wears off quickly and doesn't convert casual viewers into consistent audience members. But WWE is addicted to those spikes, addicted to the positive media coverage and social media numbers even when they are fundamentally hollow and don't reflect actual business growth. The path forward from this disaster requires WWE to make some hard decisions about how they use legends and part-timers going forward. If they are going to bring The Rock back, they need to use him in ways that explicitly benefit and elevate current talent rather than overshadowing them. Rock should be putting people over, making them look strong, passing the torch in definitive ways that audiences can't miss or misinterpret. If Rock wants to appear and take money from WWE, the trade-off should be that he makes current stars look better, not worse. And if Rock isn't willing to do that, if his ego or his brand concerns won't allow him to take a loss or be positioned as anything less than the most dominant force in any segment he's part of, then WWE needs to have the courage to say no thank you. We're going to invest our resources in building the talent we have rather than renting your star power for diminishing returns. Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker specifically need immediate rehabilitation booking to undo the damage from this segment. Next week on Smackdown, they should both be destroying multiple opponents in squash matches, looking unstoppable and dangerous again, reminding audiences why they are supposed to be feared. WWE should address the Rock segment head-on through commentary or character work, with Reed and Breakker expressing anger about being disrespected and vowing revenge, framing them as motivated by what happened rather than just forgetting it occurred. The goal should be to take a bad situation and use it as fuel for character development and renewed audience investment, turning the burial into a story about resilience and coming back stronger. Whether WWE actually does this remains to be seen. Their track record on following up and fixing mistakes is inconsistent at best, but it's the minimum required to salvage these two characters after what happened. So here's what I desperately need from you in the comments because this conversation is crucial for WWE's future direction. Do you think The Rock appearing and destroying Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker was good television that benefited WWE, or do you think it was short-sighted nostalgia booking that damages current talent? Should WWE continue bringing back legends for these kinds of segments, or should they focus exclusively on building and protecting their full-time roster? If you were running creative, how would you book The Rock's appearances to maximize his value while also elevating current stars rather than burying them? Are you more or less interested in Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker after seeing them get destroyed by a part-timer? And what would WWE need to do to make you care about them again? And fundamentally, do you believe WWE can build new stars to Rock's level if they keep bringing Rock back to remind everyone that nobody today is as good as he was? These questions don't have easy answers and reasonable people can disagree, but the discussion needs to happen because WWE's current trajectory is unsustainable and eventually all the legends will be too old to appear and someone needs to be ready to carry the company. The Rock appeared backstage on Smackdown and destroyed Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker, and whether you think that was entertaining or infuriating, you cannot deny that it raises serious questions about WWE's priorities and their commitment to actually building the future rather than endlessly recycling the past.